I can't say it any clearer that, give to the world the best that you have, and the best will come back to you. And I never once, this is the main thing I find so many people right now coming out of incarceration, because everybody thinks they won't come out and be a celebrity. I never wanted to be a celebrity. And I think that was not my goal. Worrying about how much money you're going to make. That's insanity for me. Do the work and the money's going to come to you. I truly believe in that. I never worry about money. I believe if the fowl of the air have worms in the ground to eat from every day, I believe that God, my Father, will take care of me every day to make sure that I have food, shelter, and clothing. And that's how I live. Don't worry about your past. Focus on your future, because your past can never dictate where you're going.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Have you ever hit rock bottom and wondered if that moment would define the rest of your life? One of today's guests knows that feeling because at one point in her life, she found herself sitting in a jail cell. But strangely enough, that's where she found something most people wouldn't expect: freedom. Surrounded by four walls, she made a choice not to let her worst day become her whole story. When she got out, she carried with her a new purpose, with a heart to help others. That calling led her to get involved in criminal justice reform. Along the way, she crossed paths with Arkansas State Director for Americans for Prosperity, Ryan Norris. What started as a shared mission to make a change also turned into a deep friendship. In fact, she became so close with his family that she's like a godmother to his daughter. Because she refused to let her past define her, she's now making a real difference, not just in policy, but in people's lives. I want to welcome to the podcast our guest for today, Ruby Welch, and AFP Arkansas State Director Ryan Norris. Ruby, Ryan, welcome. Hey, before we get started, Ruby, my understanding is that the number 7 has played an interesting role in your life. Why is that?
Well, because I'm coming from a family of 10, and I'm a mother's 7th child. I was born on the 7th day, but I was born in 61, with 6 plus 1 equals 7. Even when I was incarcerated, my last 4 digits, 6416. 6 plus 4 equals 10. That's the 10 kids. 1 plus 6 equals 7. That was me. So I felt like I was destined to go through McPherson in order to be able to be here. And number 7 means completion.
Yeah. It's like the Lord's number, I think. That's pretty fabulous. Wow. So, Ruby, I mentioned when we were kind of on the intro, like that you found yourself in a jail cell, but that actually led to transformation in your life. I mean, can you share with us how you found yourself in a jail cell and then what you learned while there?
Yes. So one thing that I did once I got to prison in my late 30s, I had to start looking at my life as far as how did I end up here. And it's because of all of the life happenings, being molested at having a trauma to my body by being burned over 95% of my body at 11, the date rapes as a teenager, all of those things, that I basically suppressed and became anger, and anger became my power. And I started selling drugs, thinking that I wasn't hurting anyone. But I realized not only was I hurting the community, I was hurting myself. But while in prison, I look back on all of this and realized that I had to set myself free from people, places, and things. And the only way that I could do that was to be able to come back and heal other people who I knew were mentally going through the same things and physically that I had went through, but they weren't just talking about it. So that's how I found my freedom in prison, by looking at my life and coming home and sharing it.
Wow. So when you got out of jail, what was the biggest struggle you faced after being released?
Everything. Well, we're talking about 2006. So I was widow because my husband had gotten killed 6 months before I went to prison by his best friend. So I was a widow. I didn't have any children. So I couldn't get housing. I couldn't get SNAP benefits, food stamps. I couldn't get medical help. So I only had $100 check to my name and $30 of that I had to give to my parole officer within 24 hours. So at least I had $70 to try to buy some little necessities. But thank God, I had one friend, Dominique Queen, she actually gave me her realtor's card and said it go shopping. But food, shelter, and healthcare was my main struggle. And then people just accepting the fact that even though I had committed a crime in 1996, here I am in 2006. And I wasn't criminal minded, but people still looked at me as a person that they couldn't trust. So trying to find a job was extra hard in 2006. It's gotten a lot easier, thank God, to some of the policies that Ryan and myself and other organizations have worked on. But overall, it was a mess to the point to where there were days, Mr. David, that I just actually said to myself, I had it better in prison.
I mean, that's a tough place to be. Yeah. I think a lot of that's lost on people when they think about, folks being released from prison for whatever reason, and a lot of times, even if folks have changed and really want to go on a great path, there's so many obstacles that have been put in front of them. And I guess that's what you were living. So Ruby, you, eventually, you mentioned you got into advocacy work, and, there's so many challenges that, like you said, coming out of prison and that people, there's so many obstacles that you have to face. But you said earlier that, your part of your healing was helping other people heal and helping them on their journey. So how did you get moving in the advocacy work?
Well, 3 months after I came out of prison, I had some people that were from the corporate that were working in the background trying to assist me. And I came to Little Rock and I met Reverend William Tollett, who was the director of the Union Rescue Mission Byron Center. And he hired me on as his assistant manager. And he worked with formerly incarcerated males and people who had addictions. And so I was able to train these people how to transition back into society. And one day, after we had came out from doing a feeding, a cold or something to assist unsheltered people, I said, I want to do what you're doing, Mr. Tollett. And he said, you're already doing it. Just go for it. And so I started going to different meetings around Little Rock. And that's actually how I ran into Ryan, is sitting at these different tables. And I guess I was paying just as much attention to Ryan as Ryan was paying to me, because I was like, who is this man that is talking about assisting formerly incarcerated people, which at that time, and they still do it now today, they were returning citizens. And I know that I spoke up and I said, I don't like that terminology, because I didn't lose my citizenship when I was incarcerated. I lost my right to vote. I lost my right to even feel human amongst people who say that they have a desire for a transition back properly, but wind up talking to Ryan. And actually, that's how it all began. One day we just start talking, and it all began with me just speaking to him about who I was, what I wanted to do, and him putting me on the right track.
So, Ryan, what did you think when you first met Ruby?
Well, definitely, Dave, working in the community space and seeing leaders within communities, those that are both actual leaders with people that follow them, and then those that are professed to be leaders by virtue of just the roles or the positions that they hold. I recognize that Ruby was a leader. At any point in time, she had people that trusted her, believed in her, and would follow her. And I recognized that early because you don't see that all the time, even in the spaces that we work. You have a lot of folks that lead with credential. They lead by, from a position of authority, but she was a grassroots leader in the purest sense of the term. And we bonded around this idea that, is very important to us at Americans for Prosperity, the role of human dignity in policy. And you can't find a space in which human dignity is more of a necessity and a positive tool for change than in this space of, justice, criminal justice reforms. And so we bonded around the policy, but we bonded around the principles more than even that, which led us to have a series of productive policy engagements that resulted in, greater dignity for women that are pregnant and incarcerated, allowing people who have paid their debt to society to have an easier pathway to have their records sealed. All kinds of things that we've worked on that really are about the back end of the justice system, to where at some point government ceases to be the punisher and becomes the partner of helping these folks reintegrate into society. And there's so many barriers there that no wonder recidivism rates are high. No wonder that, you have folks that get caught in cycles of poverty, because there are policy barriers that keep that from happening, and people feel justified in putting those barriers up. This is an easy population to otherize and to make the scapegoat for all of society's ills. But when you do that, you continue the legacy of what those policies that had negative effects. So we were able to bring some changes that, in one particular instance, there was the ability for 60,000 more Arkansans to have their records sealed in the state of Arkansas here. And that's like one of our largest cities would be about that amount. That's like North Little Rock. In population of people who deserve to have their records sealed, to say that they had done right and paid their dues. And this would allow them better housing opportunities, better education opportunities, better work opportunities. But we're a bottom-up organization, David. And so Ruby informed me on what people were needing. And we used AOP resources and brand to advance those ideas, but also to resource Ruby to build that grassroots army even further out and add validity to the solutions we were bringing to the table.
That's great. It sounds like, you both recognize authenticity in one another, and then just shared principles that, really kind of, it was jet fuel in this relationship. And it seems like you've had a great professional relationship of really trying to help people see that there are people kind of left behind. I mean, there's just people as a society, it almost feels like we toss aside and just say, hey, they made mistakes, forget about them. And I that's no way, that's an unsuccessful strategy for our society, let alone, the individuals who are caught up in that system. I mean, societally, we're weaker when we do that. But you also guys have really, I understand you guys have formed a deep personal friendship. And, to the point that like Ruby and Ryan, that Ruby and your daughter have gotten to know each other and are close, and Ruby plays a role there. Maybe talk to me a little bit about how that personal friendship has developed.
So my daughter, Gracie, is a very strong-willed, very type A personality. I mean, she is already a little leader at the age of 12. Wherever she goes, kids will follow her. Older children will even follow her. And so recognizing, that she has this great, sense of leadership, there are character traits of Ruby Welch that I hope to have developed in my daughter's life. Ruby, as she said, does not have children of her own, but I hope that she will be able to have a legacy of her drive, her desire, her fortitude, and just her sense of caring. I hope that is replicated in my daughter Gracie through the relationship that they have. And if you'd have told me years ago that I would have had someone with Ruby's background to be considered not only part of my family, but would be just as such an influence on my daughter's life, I would have said, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I stand very confident and very assured that there isn't a better character example for my daughter in her life than Ruby Welch.
So, Ruby, why is Ryan's daughter so important to you?
Because I saw myself. I saw 8-year-old, 7-year-old Ruby when I first saw Gracie, because she was younger. It's 2018. So I saw me and I watched her, and she would always come to me if she was in the office and I was in the office, or we were out having lunch at Ryan, and we would bring her. She would always just have these extreme topics that you don't hear out of most children that she wanted to speak about. And that's how I was when I was younger. But, how back in the day, they'd always say, oh, stay in the place of a child. That's not for you to be discussing. But when she would come, she came to me about an idea about free lunch for all the children. I mean, she had it written down, drawn out, and it just intrigued. I was like, I've got to let her know who I am in order for her to keep going forward. And don't listen to the outside noise. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't be president, because Gracie's going to be president. And if that's what she want to be, then that's what she can be. And so I want to instill in Gracie things that weren't instilled in me when I was a young woman. That it took me to my adult age to realize that it doesn't matter what people say I can't do. It's what my heart says that I can do. And I thank Brian and Miss Amanda for giving me the opportunity to even show her the love that I do. And I know Gracie feels my love, and I feel her love for me. And it's just like Ryan said, it's like we're kindred spirits. I'm 64, Gracie's 12, but it's like we sit down and she brings out the little girl in me. I'm able to be even freer with her than I am with most adults. And I appreciate that, because I need my little girl right now in my life to be able to show up and reassure me that it's okay to laugh. It's okay to be silly. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to sit on the ground. It's okay to take off your shoes and rub them in the mud, or whatever we feel like we want to do that day. So I appreciate Gracie for allowing this mature woman to be able to still embrace the little girl in me.
God, I love hearing that. That's just kind of warms anybody's heart. My gosh. Kids are pretty amazing that way. And, so Ruby, we got probably, a few minutes more of our conversation, but what advice would you give to someone who finds themselves in the situation you were in? How would you tell them to change their life, or what decisions would you ask them to make to live a fuller and better life?
The first thing that anybody that finds themselves who have become criminal minded is to first take responsibility and accountability for what you done. Don't start pointing fingers and playing the blame game, because you'll never heal. You'll never clean up your mindset. I'm a woman of God, and I believe that, you got to restore your mind. And so I had to admit the wrongs that I've done to people. And then I had to forgive, even if I didn't see those people again, the people who had wronged me. And then once you come out of incarceration, or whether it be county jail or prison, finding some leaders. Like, I started off with Sister Flora Muhammad, Amahi Shakur. They showed me the ground roots work of the criminal justice reform. And then when I came to Ryan showing me the policy part, is think about where you want to be in order for you not to return to where you were. And that's my advice to anybody. And I can't say it any clearer that, give to the world the best that you have, and the best will come back to you. And I never once, this is the main thing I find so many people right now coming out of incarceration, because everybody thinks they won't come out and be a celebrity. I never wanted to be a celebrity. I think that was not my goal. And worrying about how much money you're going to make. That's the sanity human. Do the work and the money's going to come to you. I truly believe in that. I never worry about money. I believe if the fowl of the air have worms in the ground to eat from every day, I believe that God, my Father, will take care of me every day to make sure that I have food, shelter, and clothing. And that's how I live. Don't worry about your past. Focus on your future, because your past can never dictate where you're going. It's only like looking in a rearview mirror to make sure that you're not crossing a lane too fast and then a bump into somebody else, or that somebody's not following you too close. That's how I look at my past life, as a rearview mirror that reminds me I always need to check my total surroundings before I change lane, speed up, or slow down. But I really have tunnel vision. I'm just going forward. I only use the rear view when I need it, but it's not a must.
That's fabulous. I really appreciate you, Ruby, especially sharing, some of your life experience and just the transformation that you've experienced and how you've used that to help others and bring others up and make such a difference. And Ryan, you've done that, in your role and, in your life and in your professional life. And I'm grateful for both of you sharing that with us here on the podcast.
Because the thing about it is, there was a lot of people that poured into me. Like first, Sister Paul, Muhammad, Amari Shakur, they poured into me. But then there was a lot of people who took advantage of me. And the one thing that I loved about Ryan was he can just say, well, okay, Ruby, I need you to do A, B, C, D. He took me under his wing and would call me and say, show up here, show up there. And he would explain to me while we were going through different situations. And that's how I actually learned. I have to actually be there and do the work. So I count on fast, and I appreciate Ryan for that, because no one would ever think two people so different could make this world actually a better place to live.
Yeah.
And it's almost like saying, wow, we can all really get along if we just take the time to sit down and talk to one another and see that we're not that much different from each other. We're actually more alike than anything.
Amen. Ryan, you get the last word.
So, Dave, in all of this, being a grassroots organization, we talk to hundreds of people, thousands of people in a month here in the state of Arkansas. And there is just this sense of hopelessness at times and this sense of frustration that I just can't make my life better. But when AFP meets with individuals like Ruby who have that desire to say, government and policy isn't something that just happens to me, it's something I can change and something I can affect. When we get with those folks and we resource them and we walk them through the process of how policy becomes the law, and they get that vision of I can make a change, amazing things happen. And we're so very pleased to show that one of the perfect examples being here with Ruby, that she can talk to you about multiple pieces of legislation to where it has improved people's lives. It makes me really excited when I go places and someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, Ryan, have you heard about this latest change to this policy or to this law?" And I'm like, well, not only have I heard of it, we help bring that about. And so partnering with someone like Ruby is just amazing. Taking that one small step of just connecting with AFP, getting in touch with us, learning who we are, learning what our vision truly is, what we're really intending to have happen in our society. People connect with that across the political spectrum, and they just want some normalcy, some change, and some hope in their life. And I think that AFP has that vision for them as well. And we're here to be a help to communities.
That's great. So I couldn't agree more. Well, hey, Ryan, Ruby, thank you so much for being with us. And I so appreciate you sharing your stories and give us a little insight into your relationship. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, please be sure and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.